You know, if Kyle Busch hates losing so much, why is he in NASCAR? How's it going, everybody? My name is Eric. Welcome to this week's episode of Out of the Groove. I'm very excited for this week's show. Not only do I have a decent amount of things to talk about, but I got pretty strong opinions about a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about, so I'm excited to get rolling into it here. So last week was NASCAR's longest race of the season, the Coca-Cola 600. While most cup races are 400 or 500 miles long, this one is 600 miles long, made even longer by the fact that we had a brief rain delay midway through. Now, like I always do, generic stuff, I thought the racing at Charlotte was pretty solid. I would like to have seen a little bit more passing up front. Felt like the top 5 or 6 was pretty solid most of the night. Guys like Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., Matt Kenseth, Jimmy Johnson until late really never left the top 5 for most of the evening. But that being said, I always liked Charlotte. I thought they did a pretty good job by the end of the race. You could see multiple grooves working a little bit. It seemed like the bottom was typically the way to go, and that's kind of what made it hard to pass. But all in all, not a bad race. And the big takeaway is that Austin Dillon, he's been in the Cup Series now, this is his 4th year in the Cup Series, something like that, got his first career Cup Series victory, winning the race on fuel mileage this week in the Coca-Cola 600. And Austin Dillon driving for RCR, team that, really since Dillon came to the Cup Series has not shown the speed it had in years past when guys like Harvick, Jeff Burton were always competitive. But all that being said, RCR this year now has 2 wins. Ryan Newman got a win earlier this year, and now Austin Dillon. So RCR, that's 2 more wins than Joe Gibbs Racing has. And Austin Dillon had started to show pretty good signs towards the end of last season when he made the chase on points and actually advanced past the first round. And I remember he had a strong car at Texas Motor Speedway last fall before this happened. Y'all thought I forgot about that, did ya? But all in all, Austin Dillon thinks it started to look up for him. But then this year started and they haven't been very good. In fact, coming into this weekend's Coca-Cola 600, I believe he was 24th in points, which is not where you want to be. A lot of that had been, just bad luck, maybe getting caught up in wrecks, multitude of issues, but all in all, they just had not been very good. And that was also kind of the case this weekend at Charlotte, but like I said, they played the fuel mileage game, managed to stretch it out just about a lap and a half further than the rest of their competitors, and hey, he got the win. I'm going to move on for now, but I'm not done talking about Austin Dillon and this last weekend's race. I'm just going to move on to another big storyline or another thing that needs to be discussed. Martin Truex Jr., who if you remember a year ago, basically dominated the Coca-Cola 600, led almost every lap of that 600-mile race. This year was a little bit more of the same. He won 2 of the first 3 stages and ultimately finished 3rd in the race, had the best car most of the night, led the most laps. Truex, so tough to beat on mile and a halves. And Martin Truex, with that 3rd place finish, did take over the points lead. Now, Truex already has 2 wins, which is tied for most in the Cup Series right now, but now he's leading in terms of overall points, so good for the 78 team, I guess. Toyota in general really dominated this race. You heard me mention drivers that were in the top 5. Kyle Busch, Matt Kenseth, Denny Hamlin at times. The Toyota drivers were filling that top 5. Eric Jones even, Suarez was up there pretty high. Toyota looked to be back to their normal selves we saw for a lot of last season. Kyle Busch, after winning the All-Star race last weekend, backed that up with a 2nd place finish here in the Coke 600, but that included a stage win. He won the first stage race, so that's an extra bonus point for him. Kenseth finished 4th and Denny Hamlin finished 5th, so a strong outing for Joe Gibbs Racing to say the least. And you think a team that had kind of struggled with speed and handling in their cars for most of this season, you'd think that all their drivers would be pretty happy with, 3 top 5s. But boy, Kyle Busch was in rare form during his Sunday night post-race interviews. While he was clearly disappointed during his post-race interview out on pit road, it carried over into the media center where Kyle Busch was, he was Kyle Busch. I can't show the actual clip because I don't own it, but it's pretty easy to repeat. When asked about Austin Dillon's win and how he was able to stretch it on fuel and what, if he had anything to say about that, Kyle's basic response was just, "I'm not surprised about anything. Congratulations." So clearly Kyle wasn't in the mood to talk. And now me personally, I feel like on the show, I've always done more defending Kyle Busch than I have going after Kyle Busch, which I really don't know why I've done that. I don't really like Kyle Busch. I'm not a hater. I don't hate Kyle Busch, but I wouldn't put him up there with my favorite drivers. But this is just another instance of Kyle Busch, there's no other way to say it than just being Kyle Busch, because that's basically what there's no one else like him in the series right now. And everyone likes to say about Kyle Busch, anything short of winning is not good for him, and he just wants to win that badly. And there's nothing wrong when you're in a competitive sport like this. Of course you want to win, and if you lose, it's gotta be frustrating. You can't enjoy losing if you're gonna be good. And all that I completely agree with, and I have no problem with drivers or any athlete like that showing disappointment and stuff when they lose a race, a game, however it is. Obviously that's part of sports. Why we like sports is to see that raw emotion from athletes or from, people involved. But goodness, Kyle Busch, the dude's in his late 30s, he's married now, he has a son, and he's still acting like he's 19 and he just got kicked off or he got benched while playing on the baseball team or something. It just feels like every interview, especially this season, it feels like he's taken some steps backward in terms of his maturity. It just seems like every interview the reporters are just walking on eggshells around him because they don't want to say something to really tip him off and make him super angry. It's kind of the same way reporters, I felt like, wandered around Tony Stewart his last couple of years. You know, they wanted to ask Tony questions because he would give fun answers, but they were afraid to make him too angry. But Kyle Busch this season, I mean, I think it has to come with the fact that he hasn't won a race in like almost a year now. And I've joked about it in the NASCAR parodies, but I think there is some reason why he likes to run those Xfinity races, because he knows he's probably going to win at least half of the ones he races in. So with, the dozen Xfinity and truck wins he probably has since his last Cup win, that's obviously doesn't seem to be enough to please him. And I'm getting off topic, but like I said, I have no problem with drivers or any athlete like that being disappointed when they lose. But there's a reason my favorite driver is Matt Kenseth, and I like guys like Martin Truex Jr. and Jimmy Johnson because, they've been around a long time. They've won a lot of races. They've lost a lot of races in heartbreaking fashion plenty of times. But they always give very mature, very well thought out, very just professional interviews, and they speak their mind in a very, best word to use is professional, very professional manner. And the reason I've never been a big Kyle Busch fan is because he rarely has been able to do that. And it is for cases like this why Kyle Busch is one of the, if not the most disliked, probably the most polarizing name in NASCAR today. He's got plenty of fans, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of people that like Kyle Busch, plenty of you guys watching like Kyle Busch, and I understand why. He's a great driver, he's very talented. He might be the most talented driver in the sport, in my opinion, but he's kind of nuts. And a lot of people don't like the craziness about him and kind of just the immaturity, kind of the childish antics, if you will. And this season, honestly, has not been a good look for Kyle Busch. While he did get the All-Star win, and that was probably the highest point for him, he's had several instances, like at Vegas earlier this year when he and Logano got into it on the last lap, ended up resulted in throwing punches, and in that episode of Out of the Groove, you can watch it for like episode 3 or something from this year, I generally defended Kyle for the most part. I didn't put all the blame on him for that incident. But just keep moving forward to a few weeks ago after he lost the race late at Talladega. He started talking about how Talladega's not a real racetrack and that, it doesn't really prove who the best drivers are, that type of nonsense. And now this incident here at Charlotte where, he had one of the, if not the best car, and obviously he's disappointed that he didn't win the race and that Austin Dillon stretched the fuel and he was this close. Obviously you can be kind of disappointed, but boy, you're like 6th, 7th in points, your team's on the uphill swing. You're going to get a win. You just won the All-Star race. Put things in perspective for a second, Kyle Busch. You can't win every single race. And to be fair, Martin Truex Jr. dominated you for 3/4 of the race. You were lucky you even caught him on that last run. There's no reason for you to be so worked up over not winning this race. I can understand if this is Homestead and you're leading heading into the final corner and the second place guy bumps you out of the way to win the championship and knock you out, then yes, you can be as frustrated as you want. I will not blame you in the slightest. But we're still early in the season, you're one of the best drivers on one of the best teams in the sport, and you happen to get beat this one time by a guy stretching it on fuel mileage early in the season still. We're at Charlotte and you just won the All-Star race, so you're on a roll. And you're going to be that angry about it? You're going to be that upset that you just you can't even answer questions, you can't even give the media, the fans, people watching 10 seconds of your time? I mean, that just reminds me why I'm not a big Kyle Busch fan. I'm really encouraged that most of the young drivers in the sport right now, like Chase Elliott, Larson, Blaney, Jones, Suarez, they all seem like pretty level-headed, pretty calm, pretty professional guys. And I hope they maintain those traits about them, because if they do, I'll enjoy NASCAR for many years to come. But if we get too many Kyle Busches out here, it might be too much for me to watch. Anyway, that's all I wanted to really talk about Kyle Busch. That's really all I really wanted to talk about the race. There's not much else to discuss in that sense. Told you guys I was kind of passionate about the topics today. Now, the other big thing I did want to hit on is something that I don't know as many people will agree with me on. Since NASCAR implemented the current kind of 16-spot chase playoff format that they have now, I've kind of gone back and forth with whether or not I liked the whole win a race and you're basically in the chase format. In a lot of ways, I disliked it because, in years past, it's allowed guys like Chris Buescher to fill a chase spot when clearly he'd had no business being there. But other times I did like it because, like I said, in 2015, Kyle Busch had to spend a pretty good amount of the year on injury, out with an injury. He came back from injury and was clearly the best driver in the sport. Clearly had the best team, best car, and in that case, the win in your end worked out because I honestly thought he did deserve to be in the chase that year. So, as a result, last couple of years, I've just kind of been going back and forth. I'm the kind of guy you guys know, I like to reward consistency, so the fact that any old guy in 30th in points can win a race and automatically fill a chase spot doesn't sit super well with me, but I've been going back and forth with it. But you can probably guess where I'm going with this. After this week's Coke 600, as much as I talked about how Austin Dillon had been running better last year, he ran well in the chase, Austin Dillon has no business having a playoff spot at this point in the season. Like I mentioned earlier, Austin Dillon coming into this race at Charlotte was 24th in points. Even with the points that came with this victory, he's still 21st in points. Remember, the top 16 make it in. He's still 21st. And that just doesn't sit well with me right now. And in my opinion, you're already letting 16 guys into the chase. You look at it, NASCAR, there's maybe 30, 35 teams that actually take points in the Cup Series. You know, like in baseball, football, there's 30, 32 teams. Basketball, there's 30 teams. You know, in NASCAR, there's only about 33, 34 teams that are taking points in the Cup Series. 16 of them make the chase. That's a lot. And in my personal opinion, after this weekend, I think what I'd like to see NASCAR do, they're probably not going to do it next year. They've probably already decided what they're doing next year. But in the future, I hope that NASCAR decides to just change it to the top 16 in points make the chase. Doesn't matter how many wins you have. If you're in the top 16 in overall points, you make the playoffs, you're in. And maybe once the playoffs start, if you have wins, maybe those count as bonus points. I'm good with that. I like that idea. But I'm officially against the idea that you can win the Daytona 500, first race of the season, and basically you don't have to worry for 26 weeks in a row because you know you're basically locked into the playoffs. I don't want to see that anymore. I'm tired of it. I think it makes the races less interesting if your drivers won. It makes drivers, in my opinion, who don't deserve to be in the playoffs get in over guys who I think are more deserving. I'm tired of seeing it. I want it gone. But now, I'm not an unreasonable person. I'll look at both sides. There's pros and cons still. Here's some of the pros to the current format. You know, under the current format, like I said, when Kyle Busch came back from injury in 2015 and clearly was the best car, best team when he came back, you know, he wouldn't have made the chase if we had gotten rid of this format and wouldn't have won the championship. And I think that might have been unfair. Or last year, you know, it was Tony Stewart's last full-time season in the Cup Series, and that win that he got at Sonoma, you know, last lap pass, crazy, it's really fun race. Locked him into the chase, locked him into the playoffs for the last time, and that was fun for the fans. Even though Tony had no business being in the playoffs, he was a terrible team all year. Or even if you look at some of those guys I mentioned, like last year, Chris Busch, a young driver, I think he was a rookie last year, right? Getting into the playoffs for the first time. That was kind of fun. Or even this year, it looks like Ryan Newman or Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who both got those wins, they're probably locked into the playoffs, but at least Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is 13th in points, and I think Ryan Newman is, I want to say he's 16th in points right now, so at least they're in the chase already. So I'm not worried about them. They actually might contend for something. So the pros are sometimes a fan favorite like Tony Stewart or like Kyle Busch does get in the playoffs despite not having great seasons, and that's decent for NASCAR. And it could work out this year too because Dale Earnhardt Jr. is 23rd in points right now. He has obviously not had a lot of luck this season. A win for him at Daytona, say in July. Boom, he's in the playoffs, and I'm sure a lot of you fans would be thrilled to see that. Because of Austin Dillon's win in the Coca-Cola 600, if the chase or the playoffs were to start next week, here are some notable drivers that he would be in ahead of. Austin Dillon, the guy 21st in points, mind you, even with the points he got from this win, would be in the chase right now ahead of Eric Jones, Matt Kenseth, Daniel Suarez, Casey Kane, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and a couple others. Oh, and those are just people that wouldn't make the chase at all as a result. He'd be ahead of other drivers too, like Chase Elliott, he'd be ahead of him. You're telling me that Austin Dillon would have a higher seed plus more bonus points than Chase Elliott? With guys like Ricky Stenhouse, who's had a decent year, I will say that, or Newman, or Austin Dillon, of course, ahead of him with many more bonus points than he has. And while he gets a very long season, and a guy like Chase Elliott, more than likely, I think will get a win this season. And some of those other drivers I mentioned, like Kenseth, Jones, Suarez, maybe even Jr., you never know. They would not surprise me if one of them stole a victory at some point this season. But I think it is worth mentioning, several years ago, NASCAR did a bunch of chase format changes with a big emphasis on winning, and I thought it was way too much. Since then, they've dialed it back slightly, but I think in the coming seasons, they really need to dial it back almost completely. You know what? Fine. Make wins worth bonus points in the chase. That's fine. I don't care. That's great. Cool. But please change it so that a driver who's been outside the top 20 every single week steals a win on fuel mileage. He stole this win. Yes, he earned it. He drove a smart race in that final run, but he basically stole that win. Austin Dillon had no business winning that race the way he ran the other 500 miles. Please make it so that drivers cannot steal a win like that and then go into the chase as like the 10 seed. I'm tired of seeing things like we saw last year with Chris Buescher or a couple years ago with Eric Almirola, guys who won a race on won rain-shortened races in their cases, made it into the chase and were finished last and were out in the first round. There's other people more deserving of those spots. Now, do I think NASCAR is actually going to make any changes? You know, if enough Austin Dillons win this year, maybe. But in reality, no. I think it'll be at least 4 or 5 years before we see any really huge major changes to the way the playoffs are formatted right now. Because let's be real, the chase, the playoffs last couple of years have been pretty entertaining for the most part. We've seen drama, we've seen action, we've seen fights, we've seen all sorts of stuff. And I think it's been good for NASCAR. So are they going to change the chase format, playoff format? Probably not. But a guy can dream, I guess. Anyway, guys, that's my show. I think this is a pretty long episode. I'm not actually sure. I feel like my camera's been on for a really long time, but I've also been taking a lot of time to research stuff in between shots. So hopefully this isn't too long, but if it was, thank you guys for sticking it out. Thanks for watching up to this point. I hope you guys have a great weekend. That's all I got. Y'all can follow me on Twitter at DECS Racing, Patreon, all that fun stuff is in the description. We got merchandise like we got Doubly Cup Series hats, we got Out of the Groove t-shirts and whatnot, which I should wear. I wear most episodes. I'm not wearing today, but when I put this hat on, it covers the light, makes my head look like I'm in shadow. Don't really want to do that, but all that stuff in the description. Doubly Cup Series Season 8 is underway. Race 1 is already up. It's been up for about a week or so now. Race 2 coming in the next few days. I got a little bit behind on it, but I'm back on it now, and it will be up, within a few days now. So I'm trying to get races up within about 2 weeks of each other. That's, I think, a pretty good number. If I can make really high quality races still in a short span like that, I think that's what I'm going for. So hopefully you guys look forward to that. Other than that, I have Out of the Groove every Thursday. Thanks for watching, guys. Please spread the word. Thanks for watching. Yeah, that's all I have. What's this weekend? Dover, I think? I finally looked up. Yeah, Dover is this next race. I'm excited. I like Dover. Dover's one of my favorite tracks, so should be a good one. Hope you guys enjoy it. Hope you guys look forward to this show each week. I'll see y'all, guess I'll see y'all next Thursday. Have a good one.